So thank you all. I'm glad you're not in pajamas because we are now going to be honored by a very, very special guest. We have the immense honor of being joined today by California State Senate Majority Leader Robert Hertzberg. Senator Hertzberg represents nearly 1 million people in the San Fernando Valley and currently serves as Majority Leader. He is a seasoned and well-respected legislator who is known for taking on big challenges and working tirelessly to pursue tough issues, including policies to support services for people experiencing homelessness and their pets. Less than 1 month ago on February 9th, Leader Hertzberg introduced SB 344, a permanent grant program to support homeless shelters to accommodate individuals with companion animals. I could go on for hours about Leader Hertzberg's accomplishments, but I rather yield my time to him. Welcome so much. Welcome to our conference, Leader Hertzberg. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Carol. I really appreciate it. So where's? I'm sorry I'm late. I apologize. I'm just trying to juggle too many things.
You are right on time.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, Christine from my office came in and said, "You're late," so I felt bad. I'm
well,
sorry.
Thank you so much, and the floor is all yours.
Now, are people from all over the country, of the people that are on this, where are people from?
We are all over. I personally am in New Jersey. We have a lot of representation from the Pacific Northwest, California, New York, Seattle, Lafayette, Indiana,
Wisconsin, New York, Vermont, Ontario,
we have. This is an international conference.
Oh, this is so much fun. Minnesota, Nashville, Colorado. This is great. Well, the sun is shining here in California. I'm in Northern California in Sacramento, for those who've been here at the state capitol in my great Majority Leader's office here, which is kind of cool. It's one of the benefits. And I, as some may or may not know, if you've read my bio, I used to be Speaker of the California Assembly some years ago. And I left government for a number of years and traveled the world working on renewable energy. I had a company in Europe and on solar technology, and worked in Sri Lanka and Africa and China and all over the world in solar and wind and all kinds of electric cars and stuff. And I came back to California to run for office again, because I still have the DNA and I like to work on big and exciting issues. And you know, the thing that when we look at this issue of people experiencing homelessness, and we're spending all across the country billions and billions of dollars on crazy stuff, I saw that you have people out there with their pets. They're not going to go into a shelter if they can't take their dog or their cat. It doesn't cost any money. It's humane at every level. And so a couple of years ago, I introduced a bill. Let me see what the number was, because I've been around so long, I never remember bill numbers. In 2019, I introduced SB 258 to create a program which ultimately resulted in a $5 million allocation in the state budget. And you know, it was so oversubscribed and so wonderfully successful, where we set up veterinarian facilities and people who now wouldn't come off the streets, and were spending how much money and what packs, and yet if you just took care of their pet, it totally changes their position. And you know, in California, I don't know, around the country, from the people that I've seen here who showed, we have 160,000 people experiencing homelessness, and I think that's an undercount. And we know, you know, our numbers say it's 10% of the people have pets. I think it's a much higher percentage than that, to be honest with you, in terms of what it was. So I've come back as a result of the success of what we did before, and now I'm introducing a permanent program, and it doesn't have an allocation in it, but I'm gonna put a significant allocation in it for money so we can continue this idea, because it's just so commonsensical. You know, here you are on the street, you got nothing except your pet, most important thing in your life, and you're going to leave them on the street, or you're not going to take care of them. So it's absolutely the right thing to do, not just for the relationship between the person and the pet, for the pet, and also just for the larger issue of homelessness, when from a public policy perspective, we miss some of this like raging common sense thing, like, oh, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to make these little shelters or these other things, and we're not taking care of the very human, and I extend the human to someone's pet, element of this larger public policy issue. And actually, honestly, you know, I'm never someone who takes credit for things that that I didn't do. You know, I come with a lot of crazy ideas and try stuff. But actually, I was at a meeting and a friend told me about this, and I started looking around. I said, God, that's a smart idea. And so I put it into law, and we're going to do it again in California. And I hope in all the other states, and even in Canada that's represented here on this call, we can get other legislators. If you want me to send, if you've got legislators you think that might be acceptable to these ideas, I'll send them the legislation that I've done. When I was Speaker of the Assembly in California, I was a member, and I'm still a member of the State Legislative Leaders Foundation, which oversees those. I'm now part of the Majority Leaders Conference, which is the leaders from all across the country. So we try to coordinate. So if you have friends, just send me we'll give you my contact details, and I'll send them a language, and we'll see if we can get a bigger national movement going on this stuff, because it's a smart and right thing to do. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody else may have. And I cannot tell you, I mean, when I saw that I got invited to this, it's normally something I wouldn't attend, and it's something that I wanted to attend. I want to thank Christine Kim, I'm told, who reached out to our offices, PetSmart Charities, Maggie Funds, National Alliance to End Homelessness, Voters for Animal Rights. All thank you all for including me and asking me to participate, and happy to answer any questions or help in any other way that you deem appropriate.
Well, we just, again, want to express our sincerest gratitude for you taking the time out of your very busy schedule, changing not only California, but the world. And as a New Jersey resident, I must say we need someone like you here. So I know everyone's very, very chatty in the box. So someone is asking from Missouri.
No, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to get legislators. They all saw how smart this was and the common sense. The key is getting the, and passing this again, I don't think it's going to be hard. Also, I'm a majority leader, I know how to do this. But aside from that, it's just about getting enough money. I mean, I'd put $50 million into this if I could, because I think, just forget if you care about pets or not, right? If you care about homelessness, it will be the biggest use of money you could spend, because more people, if you got 10,000 people that came into shelters that had veterinary services, they knew their pet was going to be taken care of. You know how cheap that is compared to all the billions of dollars we're spending on this? It's crazy. It's just, as a term I like to use, rain common sense. So, yeah. But if you got other people, we'll give you, we can give Christine my contact details, and she can get out to everybody. If you have like legislators that because I just talked to a legislator in New York on another issue, and people reach out all the time. I had a conversation with somebody else. I really try to help national stuff. I remember I met this young legislator when I was Speaker in Illinois by the name of Barack Obama. He was a backbench state senator. I don't know if you ever heard of him before.
Oh,
but he was a heck
no, I haven't. Tell me more.
He was a heck of a state senator. But let me tell you a funny story. When I was Speaker, we had the convention, the Democratic convention, for those who participate in these things on the call. In LA, he couldn't get in. He didn't have any money. He couldn't rent a car. His credit card wasn't working. He didn't have credentials. 10 seconds later, he's president of the United States. And he did a heck of a job.
I know.
Yeah,
I think so too. So what motivated you to take on this issue of access for people experiencing homelessness with their companion animals?
Well, a couple of things. I have a rescue, and we're about to get another one. It's, I'm a dog person. Different people are different kind. I'm not much of a cat person, but I'm a dog person. And so, but it just, honestly, we're looking at this issue of homelessness, and we're spending in LA County, where I'm from, we issued like a multi-billion-dollar bond. We added sales tax. Right now, they're asking for $2.4 billion. And it's like so many of the things that we try to solve a problem for, we miss the basics. And so I saw these people. I talked to people on the street. They said, yeah, absolutely, I would never go into a shelter. And it's like dollar for dollar. It's not just the right thing to do. It's the smartest thing to do to get people, because, you got your pet's your closest thing, and if they're not taking care of your pet, you ain't going inside, period, end of issue. Ain't happening. So it was just trying to be smart about it. That's all.
What is the toughest policy challenge to widespread adoption of an idea like this?
Well, I just think it's the, you know, whether or not there's facilities available, because see, to me, just accepting your pet's one thing, but we offer veterinary services. I want to make sure the animal's taken care of, all of those other things, and you've got to make sure that the facilities have the necessary core competencies to take care of the animal. You know, and by the way, we don't just get dogs and cats, we get snakes and chickens and all kinds of things that people have. It's a wide range of things, of animals that people care about. So, you know, I've talked to some people in some of the shelters, and they've told me stories of some of the kinds of animals that they've gotten, and they're doing everything they can, because animal lovers are animal lovers. They help every kind of breed. Doesn't matter. So, you know, but I've heard some pretty crazy stories.
You very generously offered to, you know, share your contact information so that we can touch base if there are any other legislators. But what about creative budgeting? You know, finding the money to do this. And sometimes in the human services world, we're taking from Peter to pay Paul.
Well, I don't really think that, because I don't think we're taking to Peter. I think that, you know, one of the issues always in budgeting, whatever you do, because, you know, when people come to my office, they're coming for everything. They want desalinization plant over here to fix this. They want to fix foster care over there, whatever it might be. But for me, this is an easy argument, because the reality is, how much money does each state spending on the issue of people who are homeless? How much are you spending in social services? How much are you spending in mental health? How much are you spending in public safety? How much are you spending in all these other areas? Dollar for dollar, this is nothing, absolutely nothing. And it's like, what do we spend to get a person off the street so that they can be in a place, they can be safe, they can be warm, it impacts the community? And, you know, I don't know what's happening to the folks that are on this call from other parts of the country, but in my world, you know, I know I don't look that old, everybody, but I started in politics as a young aide when Ronald Reagan was governor of California. I was a driver for a lieutenant governor in California, first African-American elected lieutenant governor. And I've been around a long time, making $400 a month. And you know, there's always these fights on budget stuff, but I think that this is one of these areas, and the way you make budget arguments are, okay, what are you spending for other things? I have never seen the issue of people who without homes as big as it is now. I just submitted a op-ed on a bond issue that I want to do in the multi-billions and billions to build home construction, because I think the big issue is the rich poor divide. We got to give people an avenue to wealth. We got to get them out of apartments and get them into places where they own their own home. And you move this rich poor divide, which is causing this tension. But the homeless issue, people who are unhoused, I've never seen it this big before. And I suspect we're seeing the same thing around the country. I know New York doesn't, you know, has spent billions and people are in shelters, but it's an extraordinary challenging issue for us.
Someone is asking, will there be more funding opportunities for animal welfare organization and housing shelters that can be applied to cover the pet expenses and the vet care?
Yeah, that's what this is for. That's just for basically it sets up a program, and then it's going to fund it, and then you're going to apply, you know, obviously just in California, to be able to pay your expenses to provide the shelter, and which include both the shelter costs and veterinary costs.
What advocacy tips can you give us? So not all of us, we're all very passionate about what we do and the work that we do, but we're not as skilled as talking with elected officials, or sometimes don't speak their language. So what advocacy tips can you give us to get our legislators that maybe aren't on board or not looking at it as such a common sense way as you are?
Well, the first thing you would do is, among all the people that are part of the coalition, make sure that when you talk to, we in politics use the word district. I hate that term. It's like a Soviet term. What's a district? It's a politician word. We represent communities. We represent people. And so my sense is that for each one here, go to your local, I think the state effort is huge. And I would go, because the federal, you know, there's a real opportunity and it's not that much money. So number one is for each person to go to the representative in the community they represent. When somebody gets communicated by somebody who's outside of the communities they represent, it's not as impactful because they're not a voter. So align the folks who are part of your coalition with what the legislator is, and people will respond when you're from their community. That get their attention. Two, whatever you're gonna suggest, it can't be more than one piece of paper, and the piece of paper has to have a lot of white space. I don't care if legislators are from states that are part-time legislatures. In California, we actually meet more days than the United States Congress does, and we have a full-time legislature. Not every legislator.
Well, neither of these
Right.
is working now.
Really?
Someone is.
Sorry,
on mute.
apologies. If you can mute yourself, please. Thank you. My apologies.
No problem. No, it's happened. So the second thing is, I think the idea of going for the state money is a great thing. And you know, every legislator, I don't care if you're in a big state or small state, the number of issues that face you are extraordinary. It's just a blizzard of activity, a blizzard of issues that people are coming to government for, you know, and every kind of issue across the sun. So you've got to be able to communicate in one page. And I would try to do stuff in pictures and in color and make it super simple to understand. It's got to be, and I don't mean because people in government aren't smart. It's just the rate of information that you have, the amount of pages that you get when you give people a big report and stuff, it doesn't work. So, and the other thing is I would focus on the cost benefit. You know, whether you're an R or a D, it doesn't matter. Here's how much money your state's spending and your city's spending or whatever it is on this issue. And here's the prediction. If it's 10% of the folks that are impacted by this, 10% of that number is this number, which is 100x more than we're asking for. It's the most effective use of money. So I think that for people that are animal lovers, for people that care about the issues, it's important. But in terms of good public policy, I just think this one is a no-brainer. It's just a no-brainer in terms of trying to get that. And then the third thing I would do is I would have people in your communities, for your community newspapers, write opinion pieces. They give them the data to say, look, this is an idea that legislators should take it, because legislators love newspapers or love press, right? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's a way to get your name out and create the impression that you're important, blah, 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 right? So the idea is, if you can't get legislators to write it, if each of you could write, and just, you know, really simple, like, hey, as we're trying to deal with people who are experiencing homelessness in our community, here's a really simple, inexpensive idea that solves a problem. In our community, it's estimated X percentage, here's what the costs are, and just lay it out in 500 super simple words, because then what's going to happen is a politician's now going to call you and say, hey, that's a great idea. So instead of you just coming to them, they're to create some momentum in your community and getting op-ed pieces out there, and newspapers will accept those because they're looking for content all the time. Those are 3 easy steps that I think you could take that would help you get the idea out. And to the extent I can give you the language of what we've done in California, but that would be helpful. And just circle back with me, and I'll always help.
Great. The Biden administration has talked a lot about perhaps creating blanket or non-specialized voucher programs for individuals experiencing homelessness or at risk, or those that are really rent burdened. And I know that's definitely an issue in California. What do you think federally we could do to bring this up more into the forefront of not only creating housing for, let's say, families or veterans, but also seeing our companion animals as part of the family unit, because there is some resistance with breed restrictions and, you know, right. Oh, it's too much trouble and we're leaving these people on the street.
We were looking at that issue a couple of years ago here in California. You know, and you have, like, especially if you have units or housing and stuff that accept animals, a whole bunch of issues. I personally, my experience in working on, I mean, I've worked on so many gigantic issues on bail reform. Again, I'm trying to build 250,000 to 500,000 houses in California, new construction for people. You know, I work on the biggest of biggest stuff. But I really think on this issue, this approach of everybody's focusing on the issue of homelessness, and it's a big issue across the country. I don't think there's a district in the United States, well, there might be a few communities in the United States that don't have it. You know, it's a big issue, but it's a pretty significant issue. And I think that when you look at Congress, they've got so many big issues that they're facing. you know, trying to get this COVID package out. They're dealing with some of the international stuff that's going to heat up. There's obviously the vaccination stuff that's big. I think that if you can start locally and community-based, because you've got so many people all across the country, and bubble this up through state legislatures and focus to make this successful, your greatest amount of energy impact, if you can get all 50 states to adopt a similar program, you can get a lot of people off the street and a lot of animals taken care of in the process. And in terms of your highest and best use of your time, versus these bigger issues and fighting the apartment association, fighting all these other groups, I would focus on what you can win big early and get real great successes. Because when you have an organization, you have great successes, it helps breed more successes and you build from that. And this is such a thing that could be adopted all across the country. I know there are other issues, and I'm not suggesting they're not important. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to suggest that strategically grab what you can grab, be a gigantic success at it, and then use that success to build to the next level rather than spreading yourself out too thin on the stuff. And I think this is an issue where dollar for dollar, you just win at every level.
It's wonderful. Before we let you go, someone actually just submitted another question. I'll ask that one. How do you address NIMBYism in response to building permanent supportive housing and affordable housing? We know that there's so much money that the state has put towards housing, but sometimes NIMBYism is such a hard and large barrier.
That is an understatement of how hard and a large barrier it is. Yeah. You know, again, it's a strategic approach where I'm working, for example, on government, a couple of ideas. One is, you know, using government land where the cost is less. And also, you know, the idea of NIMBYism, what you hear from people is, you know, I worked my whole life to have a single family neighborhood. I don't want an apartment building in my whatever, or I don't want anything that affects the value of my house, right? And it's a strong and incredibly powerful approach. And again, my theory on that is, again, I'm not fearful of anybody on any big fight. I just want to win. I want to be successful. I mean, I've been doing bail reform for 5 years now, and they've sued me 4 times, and they've been to my house 27 times, and they hired private investigators, and they spent millions on a recall. I mean, on a referendum, and they ran people against me. I don't mind the tough fights. I just want to be smart about the fights. So when you look at this issue of supportive housing, one of the reasons why I'm going into ownership housing versus, there's 2 reasons, ownership housing versus rental housing. One is I'm deeply, deeply concerned about the rich-poor divide. We are not going to solve the underlying systemic challenges that we face in the United States if we don't bring people up and give them a chance to build wealth. So I don't want to build supportive housing. I know that it's different for people who are experiencing homelessness, but that are just renter housing. I'm going to make the landlord rich. At the end of 20 years, all I'm going to have is a rent bill that's going to be 3 times bigger, you know, than what I have when I started out. I want to be able to have equity and growth for the individual. Also, with respect to the issue of NIMBYism, there's much less resentfulness to home ownership and somebody owning a home instead of somebody being a renter. That's a piece of it. It's not the rest of the supportive services. Second, you know, I'm doing a bill now on we have, you know, huge amount of government, I keep hearing a beep. We have a huge amount of government land, and the idea is to, you know, build the stuff on government land and the like. So I just think that you know, we in California have had a series of bills that allow people to expand the size, to put these granny flats and change the zoning in certain areas. We're going to pass some of those, I suspect, but those really don't go to the essence of the question of the single family neighborhood's resentment to some of these issues. But I'm, you know, what happens in government, the most important thing in my judgment, I'm sorry to go on so long, but I don't like to give these just platitude and is confidence in government's everything. And confidence in government means you get something done. If you just blah, 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 and you keep talking about it, nothing ever happens. people don't believe you can get stuff done. You got to move the ball. You got to make stuff happen. So, you know, I want to go get government land to go build some supportive housing on that stuff to get it going to help deal with that. I want to build a, you know, part of the market to increase the amount of housing available by ownership housing. The way you do that is you basically give the person the down payment, and then you record a second trust deed, and then when they sell the house, they pay back the second trust deed, and they give you a piece, and you give them a big piece of it, and they get to share in the wealth, right? You get great wealth creation, but it avoids some of the problems that we have on the single family fighting this, because they're not angry when you're building ownership housing. And it, by the way, it costs a lot less. We spend so much money around the country subsidizing landlords and tax credits and this and that and blah 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 blah. It's much cheaper and better. So I'm trying to be creative in ways to get to goal, but to show we can make some movement forward and not just fight every fight head on, you know, like the Game of Thrones with a sword and ripping off people's faces. You know?
I have to say, I love that idea. Here in New Jersey, I see so many vacant and abandoned properties. We also have a huge foreclosure crisis still, even despite we're now in 2021. And I always think about why can't we, as I'm work for a supportive housing provider and developer, why can't we acquire these properties that are sort of just empty and blights on the community, and convert them into either low-income housing, rent to own. Instead of putting up large buildings, we can do small 2 or 3 family houses. So I think that's definitely, thinking about creatively, that's just such an amazing idea.
How do you pronounce your last name, Carol?
Sainthilaire.
Oh, Sainthilaire. I see. Yeah, Sainthilaire. I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what else you got? What am I looking
I
at
was
at
going.
time?
You mentioned you are a dog person and you have a rescue dog. So I'd love to hear what their name is. What's their rescue story?
Quinn.
You're
Her name
with
is
a bunch
Quinn.
of Quinn. What type of dog is she?
And everything. She's about 60 pounds and she's like 10 different things, you know. We did the DNA thing on her, but she's everything. You know what I mean? But she's a great dog, and she sleeps on our bed, and she's great. A little wiggy, but you know, what the heck.
Well, I really just wanted to say thank you again. This has been such an enlightening conversation, and someone said thank you, Hertzberg, for everything you're doing and for being here with us. Thank you so much.
This is great. You got people from all over the country. This is so cool.
Yeah,
it's
so
really cool.
Thank you so much. I hope we didn't cut too much into your schedule, and you are welcome anytime.
Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. It's good to see some people, and you know, and see people from all over the country. It's kind of cool. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.